Good night, everyone. Today, I want to talk about. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, but this is a kiwano. I don't know if it's pronounced some other way, but it's otherwise known as a horned melon. When I bought this from the exotic fruits and vegetables stall in the market, they had it labelled as a horny melon, which I don't think is correct. So for this review, I think I'll stick with horned melon, since I have no idea if I'm pronouncing it the correct way for its more traditional name. And this is from Africa, and it's otherwise known as a horned melon or a horned cucumber, which is interesting because we don't think of melons like watermelon or rock melon or honeydew or Christmas melon as really like cucumbers at all. But inside, to quote Patrick Bateman here, we look inside. Now, isn't that lovely? We have this brilliant orange outside skin rind, and inside it's like a lime green. It's very vibrant, a very vibrant fruit. And when it grows, it's green, and it goes orange as it ripens. And even though this is called a horned melon, it's not really. When we think of melons, we think of quite hard, firm outside skin. You can't generally tell the ripeness of a melon. There are ways. The ripeness of a watermelon, I should say, by how its skin looks, because generally, like let's say with a peach, for example, or an orange, or really any other sort of fruit, you can just sort of squeeze it to see how firm it is, to determine how ripe it is. And luckily, with our horned melon here, I don't know if I zoom in a bit, maybe you can see my finger depresses the rind here. It's not so firm, it's not so rigid. And inside, if I zoom in a bit here, and maybe we can do a bit of ASMR here. Let me go right up to the camera. It's like a jelly inside almost. And it's interesting. Well, I mean, this is, before I say this, that this is an African plant originally, and it's sort of been transplanted to the United States and to Europe and to Australia and New Zealand as well, and you can find it all around the world. It's probably quite expensive if you do find it. I paid, I can't even remember what I paid for this, but it must have been almost $8 for the two, I think. I bought something else, but I can't even remember what it was. But never mind that now. So yeah, I mean, it's quite expensive because before this catching my eye, you never see this in supermarkets. It's not a common thing, and I find things like this quite interesting because we have a chance with these, I think, and the more exotic fruits, the fruits in that are more common maybe in like Southeast Asia, or fruits that come from Africa, we have a chance here to look at stuff like this. And this hasn't been subjected maybe quite so much to the machine of industrial growing and breeding and selective breeding that maybe everything else in the West has, like apples and things like that, where we've really run it through the ringer to try and get the best fruit that we can possibly get, and stuff like this, which is not so common, which is not in such high demand, I don't think has really been subjected to that sort of machinery, and we really have a sort of chance, at least I hope. I mean, this is all just my speculation, but I think with stuff like this, we sort of have a chance to look at fruit as it maybe was a bit further back in the past, not so recently, where everything is a product as opposed to just a natural creation. And I mean, don't get me wrong, because this is, while it's not popular back in Africa, this is quite a valuable resource here because, well, one thing about this is this can be stored at room temperature for months and months and months and months, and it'll be perfectly fine. So that's important because in Africa, this is people think of cacti as sources of water in the desert because, you know, being a desert, there's not much water around. These are used quite often as sources of water in the Sahara Desert. So there's no doubt in my mind that this has been subjected to some selective breeding because obviously it's quite a valuable resource here that we've got in this fruit. But nonetheless, you know, just looking at it, I mean, me just holding it, it's quite painful. You know, I know I showed you before that we can sort of depress the skin a little bit. It's not so rigid as perhaps some other fruits or melons. But, you know, these spikes are really quite hard. And it's not a comfortable thing to hold just in your hand. So we can... I mean, this is a bit of a stupid point. But we can clearly see that something like this has not been bred, has not yet been optimized for human use, let's say. Now... moving on a bit, we've got the inside here, and if we zoom in, maybe we can see a bit, maybe why it's also referred to as a horned cucumber, because, like I mentioned, this is one of the only sort of sources in the Sahara Desert of water. It grows in quite warm climates. And so the flesh inside is quite jelly-like. It's very watery, very juicy inside. But people have sort of compared this to a passion fruit or a pomegranate even, because if we, I don't know if I can do this on the camera very well, but let me see here. I'll scoop out a bit from here, and maybe what we can see, if I try not to spill everything everywhere, but if you look at that, you can probably see that the green flesh, the jelly, it's barely even flesh, to be honest with you. It's like a jelly because it's so contains so much water inside this fruit. But the jelly is surrounding seeds, much like a pomegranate or a passion fruit. And if we go ahead here, I'm gonna go right ahead to the tasting. But also, the seeds are very similar to cucumber seeds. If you've ever cut open a cucumber, and I think, speaking of selective breeding here, I think perhaps cucumber were maybe a bit similar to this back in the old days when cucumbers grew wild and free. So I'm gonna go ahead and taste test this a bit here, and we'll see how we go. What to say? Well, I guess I should be grateful here because a lot of the times when I taste some of these fruits, when I taste most of these fruits and vegetables, I should say, is that I really don't have much of an idea of what to say, because it's like if I eat a lime, it's very difficult for me to explain what a lime tastes like without saying, well, it tastes like a lime. But with this, funnily enough, well, it's very weak. Let me put it that way. The taste is not very strong, but of course this is sort of a fruit that's valuable not so much for its taste, what it can contribute, what you can get out of eating it, and just get that flavor explosion, but maybe for its nourishment in the form of the water and hydration it provides. But the taste is very weak, and I would say it's a combination between a lime and a passion fruit. And I know I just brought those fruits up during the review, so maybe that it seems like a bit of a cop-out. But I assure you, it tastes, very much like a very weak lime. And I know lime is quite a strong flavor, especially if you just eat it by itself or you drink some lime juice or something. But very watered down lime. And passion fruit can be quite weak as well, but that's really what it tastes like, a mixture of passion fruit and lime, very watered down. The seeds are much like cucumber seeds. They can't really be chewed. I mean, first of all, it'd be very difficult to chew them in the first place because they're surrounded by this jelly and they're very slippery. But they're perfectly fine. They're perfectly fine. They're perfectly edible to eat. You just, you have to swallow them, and they're not huge or anything. They're not like Brazil nuts or something like that. They're just, they're seeds that aren't very chewable. I have heard that some people, when eating this, they'll like some people do with pomegranates. They'll take in the seeds. They'll suck the juicy, gooey flesh off, and then they'll spit the seeds out. That just sounds quite annoying to me. Not just for me eating it, but also for anybody standing around. One thing that I wasn't really able to get a handle on here is that, on Wikipedia for this, on Wikipedia pages, it's not very long. This is a mystery fruit here compared to an apple or an orange. Nobody knows what's going on with this. But it did say, hey, some people eat the peel, which of course is not very common with the melon. It's certainly not very common with rock melon or honeydew. But I know, I think in the more Eastern European regions this is more common. But they will pickle watermelon rind. I don't think that's required with this. Again, the flesh is much less rigid. But in investigating further, through going through articles and going on, people were saying, hey, you don't eat the rind. Nobody eats the rind. If anybody eats the rind, it's completely bizarre. It's unheard of. And I must admit, just holding it in my hand, the spikes are quite hard, even if the flesh is not. Sort of the flesh around the spikes, the non-spiky flesh is, it's not particularly appetizing, I must say. It's kind of like an orange peel, I don't really want to bite into an orange peel. And the prospect of putting this peel into my mouth when it's covered in spikes is not, or horns even, is not particularly appetizing. But nonetheless, I will strive forward and do my best. For the good of you, the viewer, here I go. Well, I mean, look, that definitely wasn't as unpleasant as I was expecting. There weren't spikes jabbing into my tongue. My mouth is not so full of blood that I can barely speak, can barely continue on with the review. You may have noticed that I took more bites than I perhaps usually would when getting to the tasting part. But that's because I couldn't really pin down the taste. It really doesn't taste of much of anything at all, to be honest. I mean, it's quite hard. I don't know. You know, when you eat an orange zest or something like that, there's definitely a flavour to it. There's not really much of anything in the flavour to this melon skin at all. The one thing that sort of popped into my mind, and I hate to keep referencing it, it was sort of like a Lebanese cucumber. You know, me and the boys back in the day, we used to go into the cool room with all the vegetables, and we used to just grab a Lebanese cucumber and just bite down, snack on it. It sort of reminds me of that, you know, and I hate to sort of keep bringing up cucumbers, but again, this isn't just a horned melon. This is a horned cucumber, sometimes referred to as. So, you can really say that. I mean, maybe there's like a slight touch of bitterness, but not so much you'd even pick it up, really. It just doesn't taste of much of anything at all. It's not pleasant to eat, I'll put it that way. You know, and the flesh, as before, is very, very weak taste, but it definitely tastes of something. The rind, it doesn't taste of much of anything at all, but here's where it gets sort of tricky. Talking about the nutritional content of this fruit, there really isn't much to speak of at all, I'm afraid. Again, this is so watery that probably accounts for most of it. I don't think there's much carbohydrates or sugar. It's very low calorie content. There's some flavor there, you know. There's some vitamin C here, and you can go up and you can sort of look in preparation for this video. You know, I find articles that are like, oh, the 8, 9, 10, 100 benefits you get from eating kiwano or kiwano, I don't know. And you go through these lists, and some of these things are just completely nonsense. Like, all the vitamin A will improve your vision, and while it's true that if you are vitamin A deficient, you'll have probably poor vision, there are like 100 other better fruits you could eat to get vitamin A. Referenced in the article I read on this was that the horned melon was I'm not sure how to pronounce this, a carotenoid, which I assume means it has beta carotene, which would account for the orange color here, as it does in sweet potato, in carrots, rock melon, and the reason I said it gets tricky before is the flesh obviously is not orange, but then there hasn't really been a whole lot of nutritional content tables done on the horned melon rind, not the inner flesh itself, because the inner flesh there really isn't much to speak of. But I could see that perhaps you might get standard classic fiber and vitamin A from the rind here, but I can't really, I can see that just by looking at it. I can't really find any information on that when I go online. So while it could be true that you get some insane amount of vitamin A and vitamin C from the rind here, I just can't see it. You definitely aren't getting it from the flesh. Again, I can't really recommend it based on that. You know, this article that I read was going on about vitamin E. I know in the last review we did on kiwi fruit, I talked about vitamin E a bit, and it's like in the flesh, 100% in the flesh, there's no vitamin E content. So I don't even know where they got that from. And if they're privy to some amazing information about the rind here, that's not something I have. But moving on. What can I really say about this that hasn't been covered? Well, I guess we're sort of wrapping up here, but I don't know. I'm a sucker for these sorts of things when I see something like exotic and fascinating like this. Like, it's a fruit with spikes. I mean, that's just, I've got to have one of those. But again, if you find these in a market somewhere, usually, I mean, they're not going to be in stores, so you'll probably definitely have to go to some local market to find it there. They'll probably be quite expensive. I think I saw someone on YouTube talking about this, and I think he said this was a guy in America, I think he said he paid $8 for one, which is quite a lot. That's definitely more than what I paid. So you're going to pay a lot. You don't get much nutritional benefit out of it, and it sounds like I'm just bad-mouthing it. It's definitely a unique flavor, but it's not really a strong one. It's not going to blow your socks off. You're not going to, go to sleep and then you wake up and you're just going to have intense cravings for it because it was so amazing. Well, I say that, but who knows? Maybe I'll go to sleep tonight and I'll have this one still with me, and I'll just rush out into the kitchen and sink my teeth into it straight away. But I can't imagine that it's that enticing. I certainly didn't get that impression when I was eating it. But nonetheless, it is kind of fascinating, and I can definitely see how you could use it in like cocktails or salsas or stuff like that, because while it is a weak and a milder flavor, it definitely is a unique one that can definitely go in things, and it's a unique texture as well. It's something you definitely don't see every day. That's for sure. But look, it is very expensive. I wouldn't be buying one every day, every week. I probably wouldn't even be buying one every month. But if you're like me and you're into trying new things and just see something like this and you can't resist, by all means, it wasn't an unpleasant experience. It's not like I got it open, I sank my teeth in, and I went, wow, that was the most disgusting fruit I've ever had in my life. No, look, I mean, it's fine as far as fruits go. I just don't think it's really worth paying that much money for. You're not getting something amazing from it. Just the experience of eating it by itself. But look, sometimes that's enough. For me, more than enough. And I hope you've gotten something from this review, because it's been an experience for me. I've never tried one of these. As far as I know, I've never even spoken to anyone who has. So, wow, my life's just been enriched 100-fold just by trying this today. So I don't know. You've got to make up your own mind about whether you want something like this or not. But if you do get it, enjoy. Maybe if you're going out into the desert, pack a couple. They could save your life. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you later.